What's up, everybody out there in internet land? This is Dave LeClaire with MakeUseOf.com, and today we are here to take a look at the RetroN 5, a retro game console from Hyperkin, a company who's been making retro game consoles for quite a while. They've made the Superboy, which is a portable Super Nintendo, as well as a bunch of other RetroN Duos and RetroN 2s, all kinds of consoles. But this one is by far their most ambitious to date. It plays Game Boy, Game Boy Advance, NES, Famicom, Super NES, Super Famicom, Genesis games, Master System games with an adapter. I mean, it plays everything. It comes with its own controller, which is Bluetooth. Now, the controller itself is not super good. We're not going to spend a ton of time on that controller because thankfully it does have ports on the side that let you play with a Super Nintendo, a Genesis, or an NES controller. And they're on both sides, so you can have two of each. If you're going to use this thing, that's definitely the way to go, but we'll get to more of that later. It also hooks up to your TV through an HDMI port, which means unlike the actual consoles themselves, which hook up through composite, and who even has composite ports on their TV anymore, you can hook this up through HDMI, even though of course the games are not 1080p. You're still hooking it up through one cable for sound, audio, all that stuff. It's definitely cool in that regard, and then you don't have to have them all hooked up through a series of switchers like I have, which is a pain in the butt to set up and kind of a pain in the butt to remember. It's like, I want to play Super Nintendo. Is that switcher 2, then on 3, and then switcher 1 on 2? It's hard to remember. This kind of does away with that. Another thing we're going to talk about today is the operating system, as it actually has a graphical user interface, whereas the actual console themselves, you just plug the game in, you turn it on, and you go. With this one, you can enable cheats, you can kind of set some different parameters to change the look of the video, which is pretty cool. So all that begs the question, is this better than playing games on a standard console? Well, that's what we're going to answer today, so keep watching. Make sure to watch until the end when we're going to tell you how you can win this $140 RetroN 5 console for yourself. So let's take a look at the actual console itself. You can see that along each of the sides, you're going to have your control ports. You're going to have your SNES, your NES, and your Genesis, so you can hook up whichever controller you like, and the controllers will work with games for either system. So if you wanted to play a Super Nintendo game with a Genesis controller, you can totally do that. Moving along to the front of the console, you'll see your Game Boy Advance port here. You plug in your Game Boy games and it reads them just like the slots on the top, which is pretty cool, pretty easy. You can also play original Game Boy games here. Then as we move along to the top of the console, you'll see where you plug in most of the games. This is where your Super Nintendo and your Nintendo goes. Some of the ports are a little tight, so you will have to yank the games out a little bit. Just put your hand on top of it and give it a pull. It's a little bit of a pain, but it's not the end of the world. You'll definitely get used to it. Some of the original systems were a little tight to begin with, and it kind of follows along with that. I'd rather have the pins be too tight than too loose and have the games not stay in at all. Moving along to the back side of the console, you'll see you have your SD card slot, which is how you do your firmware upgrades. You have your HDMI, you have your USB for charging the controller, and the power cable where you plug in the system itself. So this is the controller that you get with the RetroN 5. It is a wireless Bluetooth controller. And I'm going to be honest, it is not a good controller. In fact, it is one of the worst controllers I've ever used in my life. It has a weird shape that feels quite uncomfortable in your hand. The shoulder buttons are just mushy and uncomfortable. It has a weird button layout. It's kind of similar to the Genesis button layout, but more angled, and it feels weird. And the biggest problem of all comes from this, the joystick. What original retro game is played with a joystick? None. They all use a D-pad. For some reason, Hyperkin included a joystick, and not only did they include a joystick, they included a very, very poor joystick that has this weird clicky sound and just feels terrible. In all situations, I would recommend using the original controller that came with the console and avoiding this thing, unless you just want a quick way to navigate around the menu, in which case you can do it. But otherwise, use the wired controllers from back in the day, and you will enjoy playing your games much, much more. So now we're looking at the interface here. You'll see you have the ability to kind of tweak some of the visuals of the games. You can put scan lines if you want to remember back what it looked like on a CRT TV, and you can add some different effects that kind of give the games a different look. Personally, I prefer to leave these off, but if you enjoy them, it's nice to have the option. You'll see over here we have the cheat menu. If you've loaded up the SD card with the cheat file that you can get from Hyperkin's website, you'll have quick access to the cheats for the games that you want to play. So if you boot it up, you scroll through the list, you pick the one you want, you turn it on, boom. The reason this works is because the RetroN 5 is actually dumping the ROM of the game to the system and then emulating it. so it's not playing it directly off the cart as the original system would. This means you will have some problems every now and then with games failing to load, or something looking a little off or not playing quite right, and it kind of gives you that question in your head when you make a mistake. It's like, did I mess that up? Or was that something with the emulation? It's the same thing you're going to find when you're emulating on PC. Now the cart does need to be in the console in order for it to work. If you remove the cart, it will immediately stop the game because you pull it out. So you can't use this as a piracy machine. Don't think you're going to go borrow your friend's game and dump all their ROMs on it and have them saved. It doesn't work that way. You can't run them off the SD card. You do have to have the game in the console. So this is meant for people who own the physical games, not people who want to pirate them. There are plenty of ways to do that if you should so choose. I do not condone such behavior, but the options are out there. So here we're looking at some Mega Man 3 for the NES. As you can see, it looks pretty damn faithful to how it used to look back in the day. You can put the effects on it and kind of change it if you want, or you can leave it. That is up to you. But overall, I gotta say, the interface on this thing is pretty cool. Just having the ability to have some type of interface with classic games is something you don't see often. All the consoles now come with a big giant operating system that does all kinds of stuff. Obviously, this does not rival that, but it is still pretty cool. Having the cheats quickly available without having to plug in a Game Genie or do any crazy passwords. And then there's the save states, which is the greatest thing on the face of the planet. A lot of these older games were designed to be beaten in one sitting, and a lot of people don't have time for that today. So boom, you save state whenever you want. You can load that back up. It's saved right on your console. It is amazing. As far as playing games go and using the operating system, the RetroN 5 delivers a very good experience. It's not necessarily that much better than playing it on a standard console. In fact, you could say that it's worse because you are dumping a ROM and there could be problems. I did not encounter any, but there always is the risk that they could be there. But it is definitely a solid gameplay experience, and it's definitely worth giving a second look to. So we started this video off with a question: should you buy the RetroN 5? The answer depends on what kind of gamer you are. If you're a hardcore classic game junkie and you already have your systems all hooked up to your TV through a series of switcher boxes, it's not worth replacing those with the RetroN 5. However, if you're just somebody who wants to take a trip down memory lane, maybe play some games casually, have this hooked up in your living room to your main TV so that you can play the games quickly, the RetroN 5 definitely does a very admirable job of delivering the gameplay experience that you remember, with some improvements like the ability to quickly load cheats off of an SD card, firmware updates, all that kind of stuff. So if you are kind of a casual retro gamer, the RetroN 5 is definitely an awesome choice. Or if you're someone who's very space limited and you can't hook up 7 different consoles to your TV, boom, you get one console, it'll do it all for you. So it's $140, it's not super expensive, and it will definitely do a great job of playing your games. It does have a couple flaws, nothing too major. I'd say it's definitely worthwhile, like I said, unless you are a crazy collector like myself and you already have everything hooked up, you're better off playing on the standard consoles. Make sure to head over to MakeUseOf.com and enter for your chance to win the RetroN 5, because if you can get it for free, it's certainly worth anybody having it. Once again, this is Dave LeClaire. Thanks for watching. See you guys next time.